Chapter 33. If it were a one-on-one battle, the current Li Qingshan was confident he could defeat or even kill Yang Jun within 10 moves. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? Yang Jun was just about to issue an order to capture Li Qingshan. Even if the Drawn Rains village was not to be trifled with, there was no need to worry about the news of him being destroyed in the depths of the mountains. Li Qingshan's body tensed up as well. He planned on capturing the ringleader first. He would deal with the blow and capture Yang Jun first. Suddenly, someone said, "Young master, he seems to be carrying the stone splitter bow on his back." What? The stone splitter bow? Yang Jun stopped and studied the great bow on Li Qingshan's back. He had some understanding towards the weapons of famed figures near Qingyang City. "Where did you get this bow from?" "The hunting chief obviously gave it to me," said Li Qingshan. Yang Jun's expression wavered. He had been influenced by what he saw and heard in the sect, so he knew everything he needed to know. The person who could obtain this weapon was probably Huang Binggu's successor, the next hunting chief of the Drawn Rains village. If someone like that died, the Drawn Rains village would never just let the matter rest. They would be able to find out about their activities in the region without any effort at all. If they really did everything they could for revenge, the hidden arrows and traps would be difficult to deal with. He could not provoke trouble like this over a moment of anger. He swung his hand. "Kid, don't let me run into you again." In the blink of an eye, they all vanished. Only Li Qingshan remained on the mountain path. He could not read minds, but he could guess that they feared the Drawn Rains village. When strangers saw you, they would never see you as a person. Instead, they would see your influence, power, and wealth. Li Qingshan had reached the level of a third-rate master, but he had relied on the bow on his back to escape danger. He was furious. He thought to himself, "If I don't get my revenge, I'm not human. I, Li Qingshan, will never allow anyone to bully me, nor will I rely on someone else's reputation to live." Originally, he didn't quite agree with Oxen's theory that a man should be more broad-minded. But now, he realized that a lot of deadly feuds were formed because of a single glare, and they wouldn't stop until one of them died. After over a month, Li Qingshan returned to Crouching Ox Village once again. Before he even stepped through the door, he heard something inside. "Is there a thief? It's also because I live in a remote place. I'd like to see which petty thief dares to steal from me." The anger in his heart had not yet subsided. He quickly walked in and grabbed the man. The man turned around in pain. Their eyes met, and both of them were stunned. "Li Fugue. Erlang. What are you doing in my house? Erlang, you're not dead." Li Qingshan looked at the room. Although it had been more than a month, it was still spotless. He knew that Li Fugue was not stealing, but helping him clean the room. "Of course I'm not dead. Why do you say that?" Only after asking around did he find out that Li Qingshan had returned from Cypress Stream Village without any news. Everyone in the village had seen him get into a conflict with the people of the Drawn Rains village at the market, so they all thought that he was done for. Li Fugue even helped him burn some joss paper and cried. Li Qingshan did not know whether to laugh or cry. "I'm alive and well, aren't I? Hunter Huang of the Drawn Rains village invited me to the village as a guest, so I stayed for a while longer." Li Fugue never thought that he would actually be able to come out alive after entering a dangerous place like the Drawn Rains village. As for the fact that Hunter Huang had invited him over as a guest, he did not really believe it. In his eyes, although Li Qingshan was powerful, he was still nowhere close to someone like Huang Binggu. He did not know what to say either. He only muttered, "That's good. That's good." It did make Li Qingshan feel rather touched. He had not helped the wrong person back then. However, Li Fugue's expression suddenly became worried. "You should leave quickly. Don't let the villagers know." "What now?" "The eldest son of the village head's family has returned. He says he wants to make trouble for you." Li Long, village head Li's eldest son, as well as Li Qingshan and Li Bao's elder brother. The name was not unfamiliar to Li Qingshan. Instead, the villagers had almost grown calluses from hearing it. Originally, Li Long was only a few years older than him. However, it was said that when he was playing outside when he was young, He caught the eye of a noble and was taken to Qingyang City to learn martial arts. He would only return home during festivals and festivals. He had seen Li Qingshan, the cowherd, a few times, but he had never even spoken to him. In the eyes of the villagers, he was an important figure who had emerged from the Crouching Ox village and arrived in Qingyang City. He had made a name for himself. Every single family had a daughter, and they all hoped to marry her off to him. Together with Caretaker Lu's son, Little Caretaker Lu, they were known as the two talents of the Crouching Ox. Of course, with the sudden rise of Li Qingshan, perhaps they should be known as the three talents of the Crouching Ox. However, Li Qingshan had never seen the world. He had never set foot in Qingyang City, so it was rather difficult for him to become the third talent. Li Qingshan said, "You think I'm afraid of him?" Not only was he not afraid, but he even wanted to see for himself. He ignored Li Fugui's advice and made his way to Village Head Li's home. In Village Head Li's home, a young man with a buzz cut lectured Village Head Li, "Just anyone is bold enough to bully us. You really are regressing the more you live." Then he pointed at Li Hu and Li Bao. "You two are grown men, yet you allow him to bully you all the way to your doorstep." He had basically grown up in Qingyang City, so his horizons and experience were extremely abundant. He had already begun to treat himself as a Qingyang citizen. Right now, he viewed the matters of the village from the perspective of a city dweller. He felt a natural sense of disdain, not just towards Li Qingshan, but towards everything in the Crouching Ox village. He was not young, but he had never married. His family had once tried to find a partner for him in a hurry, but he rejected all of them. Right now, he was no longer someone that village girls could match. Village Head Li, who was awe-inspiring in the village, only said meekly, "Don't be angry, my son. He's already dead anyway. He's seeking his own death by provoking the Drawn Reins village. There's no need for me to go through the trouble of teaching him a lesson." Li Hu shrunk his neck in meekly, but Li Bao said, "Big brother, you won't let us join the Iron Fist and learn martial arts, so of course we'll be bullied in the village." Li Long shot a glance at him. "That's because you don't have enough talent. Li Qingshan's not dead. Li Qingshan's back." At this moment, someone suddenly called out from outside. Li Long suddenly stood up. If this news only kicked up a commotion in the peaceful village, then Li Qingshan has gone to Village Head Li's home. Would kick up a great commotion, drawing the entire village to move out once more. They wanted to see the battle between the first and third prodigies of the Crouching Ox village. Under the scorching sun, Li Qingshan and Li Long stared at each other. The villagers all held their breaths, as if they were afraid of startling them. Li Hu and Li Bao stood beside Li Long, boosting his momentum. Li Long waved his hand, dismissing the two of them. "Li Erlang, it's been so long. You've grown so big already." This was completely the tone of a senior speaking to a junior. However, the villagers all believed he had the right to speak like that, so they discussed quietly. "Erlang's in big trouble now. Yeah. Li Long can't be compared to patch-haired Lu and those scoundrels." Chapter 34. Even though Huang Binggu had a sickly body, the feeling he gave off was that of a tiger's bones standing tall and mighty. He was extremely dangerous. Furthermore, in their last exchange, Huang Binggu had made a tactical error. He wanted to fight him head-on, using his weakest point to attack his strongest point. Of course, he would not have won. Otherwise, even if he did not use archery, as long as he had a weapon in his hand, he would not have been able to defeat him. Li Long said, "I heard you wanted to see me?" Li Long also had a good eye and thought, "This Li Erlang's posture is calm and steady. One look and you can tell he's trained in martial arts. He doesn't seem like a normal brute, and his aura seems to be a bit like Master's." He immediately shook his head, finding this thought funny. What kind of person was his master? How could he be mentioned in the same breath as this kind of brat? "You dared to humiliate my family when I wasn't home. You really don't know how the word death is written." "Oh, then I'd like to learn." Before Li Qingshan finished speaking, Li Long gave a loud roar and rushed forward to attack. With a metal tree piercing the clouds, he attacked Li Qingshan's chest. Cries of alarm came from all around. Li Fugui called out, "Erlang, be careful." Li Qingshan's body did not move. It was unknown if he could not dodge or if he was stunned. Li Long felt disdain in his heart. So he was just pretending. Just now, it seems I've misjudged him. With a muffled bang, the fist landed on Li Qingshan's body. Li Qingshan used the ox demon stomps the ground, his 2 feet seemingly rooted to the ground. He did not move at all. Seeing that we're from the same hometown, I'll let you have 3 punches. Li Long was stunned. Although he had only used 30% of his strength in this punch, there was no one in the same sect who dared to take it head-on. Now that it had been taken by an unknown brat, he was even more furious when he heard Li Qingshan's words. He actually dared to be so careless. In the blink of an eye, he sent out a second punch, using 70% of his strength. He thought, don't blame me for not showing mercy this time. His fist carried a fierce gust of wind as it landed on Li Qingshan's body. Li Qingshan shuddered and said, you haven't used your full strength yet. Hurry up, this is the last move. Li Long stared at Li Qingshan as if he had seen a ghost, but he did not believe it. With a loud shout, he exerted all the power in his body, the muscles and tendons on his arms bulged, and suddenly they became a fist bigger, faintly revealing a greenish-black color, like black iron. In normal fights, even if it was a life-and-death struggle, he wouldn't dare to do this. He was afraid that he would use too many moves and expose his flaws. But now, he couldn't care less. He used all his strength to throw out his strongest and most ferocious punch. After taking the punch head-on, Li Qingshan's body swayed, and he finally took a step back. His face turned red, and the blood in his body surged. This punch still has some strength. 3 punches have passed. Now it's my turn. He raised his hand and punched. Iron chain crossing the river. The wind from the punch hit him in the face, and Li Long turned pale with fright. He crossed his arms, and used the strongest defensive move of the iron fist. Immediately after, he felt as if he had been hit by a raging bull. The iron bridge was washed away by the torrential flood, and his body flew out involuntarily. Even when he fell to the ground, he still couldn't believe it. I actually lost in 1 move. How could he have such great strength? Second punch. A black shadow suddenly blocked the sunlight and shrouded his eyes. Li Qingshan was already in front of him. Li Long wanted to block, but his arms were in so much pain that he couldn't lift them. Li Qingshan's punch came from above and landed on Li Long's stomach like a pile driver. Li Long instantly arched up like a shrimp and spat out a mouthful of acid. Third punch. It went straight for Li Long's face. The villagers cried out in alarm. They were stunned by this sudden turn of events. The number 1 hero of the village, Li Long, whom they had been talking about for many years, was actually defeated in an instant. Moreover, he was defeated so thoroughly. The 2 brothers, Li Hu and Li Bao, couldn't believe that their big brother, whom they had always admired, was actually so vulnerable. Village chief Li shouted at the top of his lungs, "Show mercy!" The wind from the punch hit his face, but there was no sharp pain. Li Long slowly opened his eyes, only to see Li Qingshan's fist firmly stopping on his head. Only then did he realize that his whole body was covered in cold sweat. Just now, at that moment, he felt as if he was facing his invincible master, and he could only close his eyes and wait for death. Village chief Li threw himself at Li Qingshan, and his skinny hand tightly grabbed his arm. Erlang, for the sake of your dead parents, let my Xiaolong go." "Dad, go away, let him come at me." Li Long struggled to get up. Li Qingshan said, "Seeing that you are somewhat filial, I will remember this punch." He was quite satisfied with the few punches he had just now, not because he was proud of his strength, but because of his strategy. Li Long had practiced martial arts for more than 10 years, and it was not in vain. His combat experience was above Li Qingshan's. If they really fought, the other party would not fight him head-on, and it would take a lot of effort to win. Therefore, he simply let him punch 3 times. Defending against such punches was what he was best at. Wherever Li Long's punches hit, he would focus his mind there, and the true qi in his body would also circulate there. After Li Long's 3 punches, not only was his mind injured, but his physical strength was also at its lowest. If he could not dodge, he could only block Li Qingshan's punches, and the result would be the same as just now. Li Long stood up with the help of Li Hu and Li Bao. Are you really Li Erlang? That's impossible. He only had a very vague impression of Li Qingshan. Other than his somewhat eccentric personality, he was not an important person. Even according to his father's description, Li Qingshan was just a hot-blooded youth who was forced to suddenly burst out with ruthlessness. This kind of thing was not rare to him, but he never knew that he had such martial arts. It was as if a child in the mountains had gone out to work hard for many years and finally earned a family business. After achieving success and fame, he returned to his hometown in glory and enjoyed the worship of the villagers. But suddenly, an inconspicuous country boy appeared and was even richer than him. The disappointment in his heart could not be any greater, and after the disappointment came anger. I am not Li Erlang, I am Li Qingshan. Since he no longer recognized that big brother, then Li Qingshan was not willing to be some Erlang. Li Long said fiercely, Then do you know who I am? Of course I know. Then do you know who my master is? Obviously the master of Qinyang City's Iron Fist, known as the Iron Lion in the Jianghu, old hero Lu. Caretaker Lu suddenly stood out from the crowd and said with an extremely high and respectful tone. Li Qingshan frowned. I've never heard of him. What Iron Fist? Old hero Lu? They all sounded like third-rate goods, but he had forgotten that he himself was third-rate. How ignorant. You haven't even heard of my master's name. Looks like you haven't heard of the 4 great masters of Qingyang, the dragon, the tiger, the lion, and the bear. Li Long called out. Don't tell me the dragon and there is you. Li Qingshan widened his eyes. This was the second time he had been accused of being ignorant today. All he knew was that in the Wuxia novels of his past life, people who used animals as nicknames were all trash. Jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards were all useless. Only true masters who used directions as nicknames were nicknames, such as Eastern Heretic, Western Venom, Southern Emperor, and Northern Beggar. Of course not. Li Long almost laughed out of anger. In the government office of Qinyang City, the advisor held a small booklet and introduced the fat official one by one. Sir, apart from these local aristocrats and landlords, there are 4 other places and 4 people that you can't offend. The fat official said in irritation, I might as well not offend a single person in the entire Qinyang City. The advisor ignored his feelings. These 4 places are a sect, a village, and a stronghold. What do you mean by a sect, a village, and a stronghold? The sect is the Iron Fist, the sect is the Dragon's Gate sect, the village is the Drawn Rains village, and the stronghold is the Black Wind stronghold. The dragon, the tiger, the lion, and the bear are the leaders of these places. Sir, if you offend these aristocrats, you'll be chased out of Qinyang City at most and lose your position as district magistrate. However, if you offend them, you might lose your life for no reason. Chapter 35. As it turned out, the group of people on the mountain path today were sent by the Dragon's Gate. The arrogant guy was the young master of the Dragon's Gate. No wonder he was so arrogant and despotic. Li Long said in surprise, You know, sickly tiger? Afterwards, he naturally saw the bow on Li Qingshan's back. As Huang Binggu rarely visited Qinyang City, he could not be certain that it was the stone splitter bow. Li Qingshan nodded and said nothing more. Li Long said, Don't tell me your martial arts are also his. No, and it's none of your business. If you want revenge, feel free to come. Li Qingshan did not want to use Huang Binggu's name to intimidate others. Li Long's expression changed. He thought, this Li Qingshan's martial arts are already third-rate, so just what kind of person is his master? And he's connected to Huang Binggu. I only have a small dispute with him. Even if I kill him, what benefit will I get? It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Li Long made up his mind. Suddenly his expression changed. He smiled slightly, although his smile was rather forced. Erlang, we're fellow villagers, so what kind of grievance is there for revenge? Li Qingshan was taken aback instead. Originally, he thought what would happen next would be him provoking the elders after beating up the young, forcing him into a corner like a swarm of bees. Afterwards, he would achieve a minor accomplishment in his abilities and kill them all. He never thought Li Long would actually be so fickle despite how reckless he seemed. Moreover, he was quite thick-skinned as well, actually changing his tune. He had basically witnessed the slippery side of the people of the Jianghu. Li Long smiled. And exchanging 3 punches for 2 punches, so I've profited. I can let you earn some more. Li Qingshan could tell that he originally wanted revenge. He had only changed his mind after hearing Huang Bingge's name. When he thought about how this was the second time he had to escape trouble like this today, he felt very mixed emotions. He hoped that one day he could also be like Huang Bingge. No, he wanted to be even stronger than Huang Bingge. Even if it was 1,000 miles away, if someone heard his name, they would still feel deep veneration, not daring to act recklessly. Li Long smiled awkwardly. There's no need for that. Don't just stand there. Let's talk inside. Our Crouching Ox village has produced such a young hero. I just happen to want to get to know him better. Then he cupped his fists in all directions. Fellow villagers, please go ahead. If I have the time, Li Long will visit each and every one of you. The villagers looked at one another. The outcome had truly exceeded their expectations, but since Li Long had asked them to leave, they dared not disobey. They just silently passed the title of the greatest hero of the Crouching Ox village to Li Qingshan. Since he had lowered himself so much, it was difficult for Li Qingshan to turn him down. Just like he had said, there was no particularly great grievance between them, and he also wanted to understand some information about Qingyang City, especially the Dragon's Gate sect. Under many gazes of respect, Li Qingshan was invited into village head Li's home. He was completely different from the nervousness he felt when he attended the banquet at caretaker Lu's home. He was relaxed and light-hearted. In the eyes of others, he possessed an air of arrogance. This was the change in mentality and bearing that came from his own strength. Qingshan, with how impressive your martial arts are you interested in finding a job in Qingyang City? Our Iron Fist sincerely invites all the heroes of the world to gather. With your martial arts, my master will definitely like you. Li Long tried to rope him in right from the beginning. I'm skilled in martial arts. Can I join the Iron Fist just because I want to? Li Qingshan found this person's breadth of mind rather admirable, but little did he know that Li Long was conflicted inside. Although Li Qingshan had punched him twice, there was no great grievance between them. If he could rope him into the gang, he would be able to help each other out as fellow villagers, which would be beneficial to his status in the sect. Of course I need to be vouched for. Don't worry, I can vouch for you. Our Iron Fist is a great clan with a great business. Our influence is not limited to Qingyang City. Our headquarters is located in the Clear River Prefecture. As long as your fists are tough enough and your contributions are great enough, you won't have to worry about development. Women and silver will be at your fingertips too. Li Hu and Li Bao were both extremely envious. They could only blame their elder brother for not vouching for them, preventing them from enjoying the women and silver in the city. My family's Luning is a caretaker in old hero Lu's estate. He'll be able to look after you when the time comes. Caretaker Lu followed them in as well. He felt fortunate that he had not offended Li Qingshan too much in the past. Who would have thought that the cowherd from back then would become so powerful in just a few months? As Li Long said that, Li Qingshan gradually understood that although the Iron Fist accepted disciples, it was more like a gang, entrenched in the city. The Iron Lion, old hero Lu, should be a branch leader or a branch sect master. Li Qingshan said, "May I ask what rate old hero Lu's martial arts are in the Jianghu? If you ask someone else, they really might not be able to answer you. My master's Iron Fist has reached perfection. He can be described as a second-rate master." Then how do I compare to him? This. Li Long never thought Li Qingshan would compare him to the peak of Qingyang right off the bat, and he was even comparing him to his master. He became rather displeased. I'm not trying to boast, but while your martial arts are impressive, you're only at the peak of the third rate. You're nowhere near my master's opponent. Then what's the difference between second rate and third rate? My master once said that a person who has just grasped the rudiments of martial arts can take on 3 to 5 strong men. An expert of the Jianghu can take on 3 to 5 such people, and so on and so forth. Although it's not absolutely accurate, that's the general idea. Once it exceeds this number, it'll be difficult for 2 fists to take on 4 hands. However, this is only in terms of direct confrontation. If you use the method of sneak attacks, a first-rate expert who is proficient in Qinggong can kill dozens of second-rate experts. However, dozens of trained ordinary archers can also kill first-rate experts. Li Qingshan roughly understood his strength. Those ginseng foragers were originally people who had practiced martial arts. Back then, he could be regarded as an expert of the Jianghu, so although he won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. After some cultivation, he barely managed to reach the level of a third-rate master. Only after drinking the spiritual alcohol did he become a true third-rate master. Li Long's martial arts could be regarded as decent, but he was not a master. As a result, he was not his opponent at all. Apologies. I've already promised hunting Chief Huang of the Drawn Rains village that I'll join them. I'm afraid I can't accept your invitation. He could not help but think of a few months ago, when he could not even sleep peacefully in the cowshed. His brother and sister-in-law viewed him as a thorn in their side, wanting to chase him out no matter what. Yet now, people were inviting him everywhere. As expected, Li Long thought. He said in pity, the Drawn Rains village doesn't have much to offer. Out of the 4 places in Qingyang, our Iron Fist is the most at ease. They're all in the mountains, so how can they compare to us, who are so close to the bustling world? Whatever. Whenever you change your mind and come to Qingyang City, feel free to come to Iron Fist to find me. Just mention my name. Li Qingshan could not help but smile. Sure enough, there were not a lot of people who wandered the Jianghu for the sake of justice. He asked about many more things, and Li Long answered everything he knew. Seeing how he was so loyal, Li Qingshan was not a tactless person, so he showed some respect. Brother Li, it's not a festival right now, so why have you returned? Li Long suddenly lowered his voice. Even if you didn't ask, I'd tell you anyway. I've returned this time for something major that threatens the Crouching Ox village. The Black Wind stronghold might treat the Crouching Ox village as a target to plunder. Chapter 36. Steward Lu stammered, No. I don't think so. The Black Wind stronghold is very far from here. They've never been here before. He was the largest household in the village, so he was the first person the Black Wind stronghold came to look for. I heard that the villages closer to the Black Wind stronghold have strengthened their defenses and built walls. That's why the bandits are so far away. It's almost winter, so they need to store food to get through the winter. Steward Lu, your granaries are all full, right? Don't tell me the government doesn't care. Only now did Li Qingshan learn that the mountain bandits also had an autumn hunt. For hunters, autumn was when the wild beasts were fat, but for the bandits, it was when the commoners who had just reaped the fruits of their labor were at their fattest. The government collects money every year, saying that they want to suppress the bandits, but they never do anything. Steward Lu said, Then what should we do? Nephew, why didn't you bring more people back? Li Long glanced at him in annoyance. He was also willing to bring more people back, but he was only one of the sect master's disciples, not the leader of the Iron Fist. It was fine for his brothers to eat and drink with him, but it was impossible for them to fight the bandits of the Black Wind stronghold. However, it was all thanks to Steward Lu that he was able to become the Iron Lion's disciple. Because of this old friendship, it was not appropriate for him to reprimand him. He only said, I alone am enough. This time, it definitely won't be the leader of the Black Wind stronghold himself. It's most likely one of the leaders. As long as I mention my master's name, he'll have to give me some face. However, I'll also need some people to keep up appearances. Qingshan. Li Long looked at Li Qingshan expectantly. With such an expert by his side, he felt a bit more confident. Li Qingshan deeply doubted this explanation. How could someone who had come all the way here just retreat after hearing his name? However, he would not let this small village that had raised him be trampled by others. He cupped his fists and said, It's my duty. With his promise, Li Long also calmed down. With the help of a third-rate expert, this matter would be much more assured. This was also the key reason why he was willing to tolerate Li Qingshan to this extent. Village Chief Li and Steward Lu arranged for some workers and servants to make preparations. They also equipped some weapons. Although the news was still sealed, the atmosphere immediately became tense. Steward Lu said with a trembling voice, "Nephew, should we go into hiding?" Li Long said, "There's no need to avoid this. They're here to plunder. They won't commit murder or arson for no reason. But Steward Lu, I'm afraid you'll have to bleed a little this time." Steward Lu let out a long sigh. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a misfortune. If it was a misfortune, it couldn't be avoided. He could leave, but his family business couldn't. They waited quietly in the room. The two brothers, Li Hu and Li Bao, were still sweating from fright as they held their weapons. They constantly thought of the various terrifying rumors regarding the Black Wind Mountain. Li Long glanced at his brothers before glancing at Li Qingshan, who remained unfazed and resting with his eyes closed. He sighed inside. "If you had even half his courage, I'd be willing to take you into Qingyang City." Clang, clang, clang. Before the sky had even darkened, a gong suddenly rang out from outside the village. It was a scout stationed outside the village, a clever and nimble junior chosen by Steward Lu. "They're here," Li Long said. Li Qingshan snapped open his eyes. How bold of these bandits to actually plunder in broad daylight. The gong suddenly stopped. They hurried to the entrance of the village and saw a cloud of dust approaching from afar. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived before them. There were several dozen people. Whether they were tall or short, fat or skinny, they all had vicious expressions. The person in the lead rode a pony that could travel on mountain roads. He actually held a bloody head in his hand. "Xiao Lu!" Steward Lu called out. The head belonged to the junior he had sent out to investigate, but it had actually been killed just like that. He became so frightened that his stomach and legs weakened. He looked at Li Long. "Didn't you say they wouldn't kill people for no reason?" Li Long's eyebrows furrowed. He said softly, "They're trying to kill to establish their might." Afterwards, he clasped his fist and said loudly, "I'm Li Long of the Iron Fist. May I ask which boss of the Black Wind Stronghold has come?" "This is our third boss. If you're sensible, hand over your money and food. Don't make us waste our time, or we'll burn down your shitty village." A bandit called out, and the other bandits followed suit. They fiddled around with the weapons in their hands as they smiled scornfully. It was like they were looking at a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The third boss had a full beard and a fierce-looking face. He tossed the head to the ground and it rolled to Li Long's feet. "Iron Fist, if the Iron Lion was here, I'd leave immediately without another word. Who do you think you are?" When Li Hu and Li Bao saw the cloud of dust, they were so frightened that their faces turned ashen. Their legs trembled, and at this moment, they even weakened and fell to the ground. The bandits laughed loudly. "The third boss is so impressive." Li Long's expression changed and he gasped. It was rumored that out of all the bosses of the Black Wind Stronghold, the third boss was the most savage and temperamental. He would plunder and plunder without hesitation. In the eyes of the villagers near the stronghold, he was someone even more terrifying than the master of the Black Wind Stronghold. However, since the third boss had asked him what he was, it proved that he was still fearful of the Iron Fist and asked about his relationship with the Iron Lion. The situation was out of his control, so he could only hold back his anger. "I'm Master's final disciple. I knew you were coming, so I didn't want you to return empty-handed. I've given you a small gift, so please spare the Crouching Ox village for my master's sake." Caretaker Lu offered up an embroidered box with trembling hands. The third boss lashed out with his horsewhip and the embroidered box flew into his hands, demonstrating his impressive martial arts. He opened the box, and it was filled with shiny silver. However, his face gradually darkened instead. "100 taels? Are you trying to send off a beggar?" "Great King, we've already done our best. Before nightfall, I want to see 1,000 taels of silver and 1,000 caddies of rations. Otherwise..." When the third boss reached there, he suddenly licked his lips and smiled obscenely. "My brothers also want to borrow a few women. Don't worry, we're not robbing them, we're just borrowing them. Once we're done, we'll return them to you next spring. The bandits all laughed obscenely. Any woman that can become the wife of our third boss would be lucky. When spring comes, perhaps that woman won't even want to return. Li Long knew the best. No woman could return from the Black Wind stronghold. They had all been raped to death. He said loudly, "Does the third boss really not care about the Iron Fist at all?" Caretaker Lu was even more stunned by this number. He was stunned speechless. "Don't make me wait too long." The third boss did not even look at Li Long. He turned his head and ordered his subordinates, "Hurry them up." The 20 or so bandits laughed as they walked around Li Long's group. They entered the village and knocked on every door. If anyone dared to open the door, they would break it down. Hundreds of villagers were chased out like sheep. They gathered together in fear. The barking of dogs and the wailing of women and children filled the air. The third boss laughed as he looked at this scene. "Let's rest in this village tonight. This child is only 14 years old. He hasn't done anything bad in his life." Suddenly, an extremely calm voice sounded. It was so calm that it did not seem suitable for the current situation. However, within that calmness, there seemed to be an uncontrollable killing intent suppressed. Li Qingshan picked up Little Six's head from the ground and gently closed his eyes. The third boss narrowed his eyes. "For you." He did not notice Li Qingshan. From the beginning, when the head was thrown, Li Qingshan's head was lowered and his body was trembling. He thought that it was fear. However, Li Qingshan was no longer trembling. He slowly said, "This is a very good and clever child. His parents also love him very much." The third boss yawned. "What are you trying to say?" Chapter 37. The bandits roared with laughter, as if they had heard a hilarious joke. However, the third boss sensed something terrifying from Li Qingshan's body and didn't laugh out loud. The head fell to the ground and the bowstring was fully drawn. "Die!" Li Qingshan attacked in an instant. His angry roar couldn't drown out the sound of the bowstring, and the arrow shot towards the third boss with his monstrous rage. A black light shot through the air, and the enormous force sent the third boss flying high into the air before he fell heavily to the ground. The power of the three-stone bow was astonishing, and Li Qingshan's movements were smooth. At such a close distance, only a second-rate expert or higher would be able to dodge it, but the third boss was clearly not one of them. The noisy village instantly quieted down. The bandits all stared with wide eyes, unable to believe this scene. The grand third boss had actually been killed by a teenager. The villagers looked at him as if he were a god. To them, the bandits were terrifying demons, and the third boss was the leader of these demons. Now that Li Qingshan had killed the third boss with one strike, he was like a god. The situation had reversed, but there was no joy on Li Long's face, only fear. "Third boss! Third boss!" A few bandits surrounded the third boss, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. With a fierce expression, he pointed at Li Qingshan and said, "Kill him." He could be considered a third-rate expert, so he reacted in an instant. Although he couldn't dodge the arrow, he avoided a vital point. The arrow pierced through his right shoulder, shattering all the bones nearby. His right hand could be considered crippled. His eyes were bloodshot, and he wanted nothing more than to skin Li Qingshan alive. The bandits reacted and picked up their swords, and halberds, roaring as they charged at Li Qingshan. A gust of wind blew behind his head as a short javelin stabbed towards the back of his head. Without turning his head, he slightly tilted his head and grabbed the javelin. He turned around and threw it. The javelin shot back with 10 times its original speed, nailing the attacking bandit to the door. A halberd, a goose feather saber, and a red-tasseled spear all stabbed towards him at the same time. Li Qingshan grabbed the shaft of the spear and pulled hard. The two bandits lost their balance and fell towards him in fright. A pair of iron arms were already waiting for them and struck their chests like iron hammers. Muffled sounds were heard and the two bandits were sent flying while vomiting blood. Seizing this opportunity, the Yenling saber stabbed into Li Qingshan's chest. The ice-cold saber and sword touched his lower abdomen. It looked like the saber was about to pierce through Li Qingshan's body, but it was unable to move even an inch further. Li Qingshan's pair of iron palms struck the bandit's head with the force of 2 piercing winds. When he put down his hands, the bandit collapsed to the ground as if he had lost his soul. Blood slowly seeped out of his 7 orifices. He strode towards the third leader, but the battle cries behind him were already deafening. With a flick of his toes, he hooked the halberd and held it in his hand. There was no technique, no apprehension, just a sweep. The strong wind stirred up a semicircle of dust and rushed towards the mountain bandits. The tip of the halberd broke and flew up, piercing the ground. Several weapons flew up, followed by a series of blood-curdling screams. Some people tried to block, but they couldn't block the sweeping force of the halberd. Smoke and dust scattered in all directions. 4 bandits fell to the ground. Only a short bandit was swept across the face and died on the spot. The other 3 bandits all had their chests cut open and were screaming on the ground. Fresh blood sprayed on the ground as if it was worthless, and the rich color flowed everywhere. Li Qingshan glanced at the broken halberd and muttered, "What a poor weapon." He threw it to the ground. But he didn't know how many hard bones and steel he had forcibly swept through in that instant. How could a normal weapon withstand such an attack? In the blink of an eye, 8 bandits were dead or seriously injured. The bandits behind them screamed in fear and stopped. They held their weapons and didn't dare to move forward. They were stunned by this tragic scene. The originally ordinary youth seemed to have turned into a terrifying killing god in a flash. Li Qingshan continued to walk towards the third boss. His face was expressionless, but his eyes flickered with a red light that even he himself didn't notice. However, his mind was rapidly analyzing the situation. He didn't let his anger get to his head. Only the third boss could be considered a third-rate master here, so he heavily injured him as soon as he attacked, eliminating the greatest threat. There were a few masters among the other bandits, but most of them were at the level of the ginseng foragers. They had only practiced some martial arts and were enough to bully commoners, but they were definitely not his opponent. "I'm going to die here." The third boss propped himself up and moved backwards. He gazed at the approaching Li Qingshan in fear. He was like a humanoid demon from legends who would suddenly transform and bare his vicious fangs. No matter how many people were around him, they were unable to protect his safety. "If I die, the entire Crouching Ox village will die with me. Do you know who my eldest brother is?" Li Long's expression became even uglier. He went up and grabbed Li Qingshan. "Qingshan, don't be rash." The third boss took the opportunity to climb onto his horse. He pulled on the reins and the horse galloped away. The other bandits didn't need him to say anything. They all followed him like a swarm of bees. They didn't even care about the injured bandits. Li Qingshan broke free from his restraints and grabbed Li Long's throat tightly. He lifted him up. "Do you want to die too?" Li Long said with difficulty, I can't kill the boss of the Black Wind Stronghold. Have you heard of Elm Village?" Elm Village. Caretaker Lu, who had collapsed on the ground and was scared half to death, suddenly cried out involuntarily. "What Elm Village?" Li Qingshan relaxed his grip. "The people of Elm Village have always practiced martial arts. They're fierce and fierce. They once killed a boss of the Black Wind Stronghold. However, not long after, the master of the Black Wind Stronghold personally led 5 bosses and slaughtered over 100 people in the village, regardless of age or gender. They piled them up into a mountain of corpses. The master of the Black Wind Stronghold personally led the bosses to offer sacrifices to their fallen brothers. Do you want something as tragic as that to happen in Crouching Ox Village? Then are we just going to let them trample over and humiliate us?" Li Qingshan growled. "Qingshan, I know how you feel, but the situation is stronger than you. Then let me become even stronger." The expressions of all the villagers changed. At this moment, they heard the third boss leave behind an extremely vicious sentence from afar. "Your Crouching Ox village will be massacred." Some people fell to the ground in fright. Cries and wails rang out again. There was no joy from repelling the bandits at all. An injured bandit clutched his chest as he smiled cruelly. "You'll all be buried with me. Are you done?" Li Qingshan said. Li Qingshan released Li Long and kicked the goose feather blade beside his feet. The blade pierced the bandit's throat, and he immediately breathed his last. I won't go back on my words. Li Qingshan finished off the other injured bandits one by one. He turned around and said to the villagers, "Nothing will happen. I promise." Afterwards, he strode off in the direction the bandits had fled in without even looking back. The sun set in the west, and the last ray of light vanished from the horizon. Darkness descended on the mountains and land. Beside the roaring bonfire, two bandits helped the third boss pull out the arrow. The third boss cried out in pain and slapped one of the bandits away. "Can't you be a little more fucking gentle?" The bandit's mouth was covered in blood from the slap. He stuttered, afraid to talk back. The other bandits were all dejected. Under the Black Wind Stronghold's fame, it had already been a very long time since they had experienced a defeat like this. They had already grown used to gazes of fear and flattery, and they were used to taking silver and women as they pleased. "All of you buck up. We'll definitely get our revenge. Once we capture that brat." The third boss smiled cruelly. "Cut him into 1,000 pieces." Immediately, another bandit agreed. Chapter 38. Who did it? Who did it? The third boss roared. Although he was injured, he still had his cultivation. Just who was it that could actually kill someone under the watchful eyes of so many bandits? Pooh, another bandit's throat was slit and he fell to the ground. Just now, he was the first to agree with third boss that he wanted to cut Li Qingshan into 1,000 pieces. The dark forest seemed to hide a terrifying demon. A terrifying shadow instantly enveloped all the bandits. No one could see who did it. How did it happen? They didn't know if they would be the next to die. The fear of the unknown was the scariest. In the chaos, the third and fourth bandits fell to the ground. It was as if the scythe of the Grim Reaper was silently harvesting lives. The night wind was cold. An exquisite hunting knife, like a venomous snake, slithered through the tall withered grass. The blade was covered with dark grass juice, so it didn't reflect any light. Tonight, there was no moon. Li Qingshan stood in the dark forest on the hillside, watching everything. Only he could see little and holding the hunting knife, pacing back and forth among the bandits. His face was filled with anger. The words of these bandits had completely enraged him. His numb and withered heart for a long time burst forth with such strong emotions for the first time. He wanted to kill all these people. Li Qingshan saw that little and tried to get close to third boss several times, but was blocked. The blood energy of a third-rate master was already extremely strong, and could already restrain ghosts. The reason why Little and could get close to him was because he used his own life energy to nourish him every day. Ah! Ah! 2 screams were heard, 2 more bandits died. The third boss was not a useless person, he shouted. "Everyone gather together, stick together." All the bandits gathered around him to ensure his safety. The blood energy and life energy gathered together like a huge flame. Even Little and couldn't get close. Li Qingshan drank a mouthful of the spiritual wine in the gourd. Demon Ox's fist of great strength wasn't known for speed, nor did it have any so-called qinggong. He relied on the endurance of an ox and the replenishment of the spiritual wine to catch up. He replenished his vitality and raised the stone splitter bow. "Now, it's my turn to make a move." Pang! The pitch-black night sky was startled. Just from the sound alone, one could tell that it was an extremely powerful bowstring. The sound was short and elegant, carrying with it a sharp force that could cut through the air. The arrow whistled through the darkness in the distance, piercing through the chest of a bandit and nailing into the body of the bandit behind him, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The moment he heard the twang of the bowstring, the bandit had already been pierced. The bandits had been through quite a few battles, yet none of them could react in time. The third boss knew that this was because the arrow was faster than sound. The person who shot it was an expert. In all of Qingyang, there seemed to be only a single person who could shoot an arrow like that with a single bow. No, it's not that person. Otherwise, he would be dead by now. The third boss glanced at his injured right shoulder and remembered the brat who had forced him into this situation. Originally, he thought he had been careless. which was why he had fallen for the sneak attack. He never thought the brat's archery would be so terrifying. In reality, Li Qingshan's archery was not particularly accurate. Moreover, he had suddenly used a heavy bow like the stone splitter bow from such a great distance. However, the bandits were all gathered together, so there was no need for him to take aim. All he had to do was shoot at the center, and there was no reason for him to miss. Third boss, it's that brat from before. He's caught up. He's trying to kill us all. The arrow came from that direction. Let's fight it out with him. No, we can't. Once we separate. As they argued, the second arrow pierced the chest of another bandit. Every single bandit's face twisted in fear. They were so flustered that they were like a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The third boss ordered, "It's all that brat's doing. Let's charge up and kill him together." He led the bandits as they charged up the hill, yelling and shouting. Li Qingshan stood where he was without any hesitation, shooting arrow after arrow. An arrow shot out from the taut bowstring, whistling through the darkness. It pierced through 3 withered leaves as it spun, stabbing into the body of a bandit. Then, it pierced through layers of flesh until it was stuck in the bones. Just now, it unwillingly stopped moving. The immense impact of the arrow didn't even leave the bandit with a chance to cry out in agony. One of the bandits by the side halted his footsteps and looked over in horror. Before the fear in his eyes could dissipate, he felt a sharp pain in his head, and he lost consciousness. The interval between the arrows was actually so short. The bandits' charge came to a halt, and they hurriedly searched for cover. However, before they could even catch their breaths, the strange bloody marks once again appeared on their throats. They were even more accurate and terrifying than the arrows. Someone died at every moment. The morale that had been raised by fear vanished. Only when they returned to their senses did they discover that the third boss had already mounted a pony and galloped off towards the Black Wind stronghold. They immediately scattered. Li Qingshan carried the stone splitter bow on his back and felt his arms ache slightly. The power of the 3-stone bow really was extraordinary. He had only fired a dozen or so arrows, and he found it rather difficult to continue. He sucked in a deep breath and took another sip of alcohol. Little N, let's chase after them. In the Crouching Ox village, the villagers were still in a state of panic. Li Long was currently ordering people to collect the corpses. "Long, how did you end up like this?" An old, dignified voice rang out in the darkness. Li Long shuddered. "Master, why have you come?" It was the master of the Iron Fist who had shaken up Qingyang City, the Iron Lion Lu Hong. "I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to subdue those bandits, so I came to take a look." Lu Hong emerged from the darkness. His eyes were like rings, and he radiated dignity even without being angry. He wore large, luxurious robes and seemed awe-inspiring, like a mighty lion. He glanced at the corpses of the bandits. "You've fallen out with the Black Wind stronghold. You didn't do it. What a heavy blow. Tell me what happened." Li Long could only tell him everything in detail. When Lu Hong heard the third boss' actions, he snorted coldly. "How dare he look down on me and the Iron Fist like this? If I were here, I'd definitely kill him myself. I'd like to see whether that blind bear is bold enough to fall out with me or not." When he heard how Li Qingshan had struck out, he praised, "What boldness and skill. How old do you think this Li Qingshan is?" "Roughly 15. Li Long himself was rather surprised, so he could only say it out loud. Only now did he remember that Li Qingshan was only a teenager. "What? He's only 15? Lu Hong was shocked. He was a veteran of the Jianghu. Let alone 15-year-old third-rate masters, he had even seen first-rate masters before. However, behind these talented youths were all the shadows of large clans and sections. At the very least, they had a master with unparalleled martial arts. Chapter 39. Li Long pointed in a direction, and Lu Hong strode over. The Iron Fist was not particularly skilled in movement techniques, but he took 7 or 8 steps longer with each step than a regular person. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and he did not slow down at all. Before long, he arrived where the Black Wind Mountain bandits had stopped and set up a campfire. Only a few corpses remained there now, and a few wolves were currently gnawing on the corpses. They raised their heads and let out threatening howls when they heard the noise. Lu Hong snorted coldly like a clap of thunder. The wolves howled and fled in fright. Lu Hong examined the corpses. This really is the power of the stone splitter bow. Huang Binggu has actually given away his famed weapon. Is he Huang Binggu's disciple? No, with that sickly tiger's martial arts, he can't raise a disciple like that. Though, since he's given the stone splitter bow to him, Huang Binggu probably intends for him to take over as hunting chief. No wonder he's not afraid of the Black Wind stronghold. As long as he returns to the Drawn Rains village, the Black Wind stronghold won't be able to do anything to him. It's not like they can destroy the Drawn Rains village. Does Li Qingshan really want to kill them all? The smell of blood stung his nostrils, and Li Long trembled slightly. He had practiced martial arts for over a decade, so fighting and brawling was nothing out of the ordinary for him. However, with the influence of the Iron Fist in Qingyang City, he did not have a corresponding opponent to fight him to the death. At most, he would teach a lesson to some ignorant hooligan or passerby of the Jianghu. He had never seen so many corpses before. Since we've become sworn enemies, we obviously have to kill them all. It's just too easy in Qingyang City. Originally, with your talent, your skills should have been much greater than this. Lu Hong felt like it was only natural, so he taught a lesson to his disciple. Li Long stammered, unable to reply. Lu Hong continued to examine the corpses. These wounds are so strange. He discovered a bandit who had died from having his throat slit. What's so strange about it? This bandit died in a pile of people. Look at his expression and posture when he died. He doesn't seem to have reacted at all. What's this all about? Afterwards, he discovered many other bandit corpses with the same wounds. Li Long's heart shivered as he imagined the strange sight. He could not help but look around. The dark mountains and forests seemed to be hiding ghosts. Only when he saw Lu Hong did he feel much more at ease. As long as your movement technique is good enough, you can achieve that. However, across the entire Qingyang, only the sect master of the Dragon's Gate sect can rival a movement technique like that. Not only does this Li Qingshan have assistance, but he's very powerful as well. No matter how experienced Lu Hong was in the Jianghu, he couldn't guess that the mountain bandits couldn't react because they couldn't see the enemy. They followed the tracks left on the ground and went deep into the mountains. The corpses of the bandits were as obvious as road signs. Some fell to the ground after being hit by arrows, while others died from having their throats slit. Li Qingshan had grabbed him by the neck. Back then, he had not been very afraid, but now, he actually felt lingering fear. They discovered another bandit's corpse. Li Long said, "The bandits are all dead. Only the third boss remains." Afterwards, they discovered a pony that had collapsed on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Before long, Lu Hong stopped and gazed below a large tree. Even he, an experienced member of the Jianghu, was extremely shocked. The blood had spread very far. The smell of blood was even heavier than around the campfire where most of the bandits had died just now. With just a single glance, Li Long could not help but vomit, as if he wanted to vomit up all the horrors he had seen tonight. For the entire night, the third boss seemed to be submerged in a nightmare that he could not wake up from. The people around him died one by one, while the god of death closed in on him step by step. The third boss circulated his movement technique and desperately fled towards the Black Wind stronghold. Although he was not as fast as the Dragon's Gate sect, perhaps the danger had stimulated his potential, so he was not slow at all. The sinister wind circled around him, chasing him closely. He did not dare to stop at all. Only when he had expended all of his inner qi did he stop. He stopped under a large tree and panted heavily. Looking down the slope, he could already see the traces of the Black Wind stronghold. Just as he smiled, twang! The arrow whistled through the air, piercing through his thigh and nailing deep into the tree trunk. Withered leaves fell like rain. The third boss ignored the intense pain. He looked at the terrifying figure walking out of the forest with a smile on his face. He was like a hunter who had caught his prey that he had been chasing for a long time. The bowstring in his hand was still vibrating. This is the end, third boss. I admit defeat today. The Jianghu is a small place, so why not make friends? In such a dangerous moment, the third boss actually took on the attitude of a hoodlum and began to speak in the Jianghu. However, before he could finish, an arrow pierced through him. Don't mention that word, because you're not worthy. Tell me everything about the Black Wind Stronghold. How many people do you have? How many bosses do you have? What martial arts does the first boss practice? If I tell you, will you spare me? The third boss was covered in sweat. He was in pain and fear. Li Qingshan considered it for a moment. I already said that you must die today. I'll give you a quick death. He did not even need to lie. He just told the third boss clearly that he wanted to kill him. He could tell him or not. The third boss said, "Fuck you. If you want to kill me, come at me. Let's see if I'll even frown." Li Qingshan smiled coldly. That's exactly what I wanted. A red light that even he did not notice flowed in the depths of his eyes. Li Long forced himself to calm down, but his eyes avoided the corpse under the tree. Master, should we continue chasing? Lu Hong waved his hand. There's no need. With such a star of evil appearing, the Jianghu will be filled with trouble from now on. He had seen many ruthless people in the Jianghu. This third boss was not inferior to them. However, it was rare to see someone so ruthless and merciless as soon as they entered the Jianghu. Who wouldn't want to vomit a few times? Only after experiencing many life and death experiences could one's heart gradually harden. Li Long said, he's only a third-rate martial artist. He relied on a sneak attack to heavily injure the third boss. Why does Master care so much about him? Lu Hong said, I can only tell you that there are many people like this in the Jianghu. Not a single one of them is weak. Any martial arts in the hands of such people can display extraordinary power. Do not carelessly make an enemy out of them. Why is that? Li Long did not understand. Could it be that being vicious and merciless meant that one's martial arts were high? The essence of martial arts lies in killing. However, Li Qingshan, who was regarded as a star of evil by Lu Hong, was currently kneeling by the stream and vomiting. His tears flowed down his face as he vomited. In the end, the third boss bones were not as hard as he had said. He told Li Qingshan everything he wanted to know in full detail. All he wanted was to die. After killing the third boss, the red light in his eyes dimmed. He seemed to have realized what he had done. He had used an incomparably cruel method to torture a living person. But that was not all. What was more frightening was that he felt great pleasure from it. What's going on with me? A cow's hoof stepped into the stream. Li Qingshan raised his head. Oxen looked at him and said with a tone that seemed to be praising and mocking, You're becoming more and more like a demon. Chapter 40. Oxen asked, Do you still want to continue? Don't blame me for not warning you. You might really end up becoming a demon. As long as I have a clear conscience and can freely express my thoughts, I will have no regrets even if I end up becoming a demon, Li Qingshan said as he stood up. His confused heart was instead strengthened by Oxen's words. Oxen could not help but look at him in a different light. Even a cultivator with a firm will would feel fear and repulsion when they heard that they would fall into the path of demons and become a demon. It had already prepared itself to patiently advise him, but Li Qingshan was not too affected. He was still firm in his choice and did not show any signs of wavering. It was truly rare. However, this was also good. If he was the kind of person who would only care about this kind of thing, it would not be worth Oxen's effort. The age that Li Qingshan lived in his past life was an age of information explosion. As a shut-in, he consumed various movies and novels day and night as mental sustenance. He had come across the most diverse thoughts, as well as witnessed the most terrifying and grand spectacles. Under the impact of all kinds of information, his ability to accept things was probably something few people in this era could compare to. He would not be bound by any traditional way of thinking. This kind of advantage and strength was slowly showing itself, and he displayed a power that no magical ability or artifact could replace. No matter how strong Li Qingshan's cultivation talent was, it was difficult for Oxen to take him seriously. However, his personality was unique and completely different, which was why Oxen placed great importance on him. "Come with me." One ox and one man advanced through the pathless mountains. Oxen did not say where they were going, and Li Qingshan did not ask. After he understood the strength of the Black Wind stronghold from the third boss, he immediately knew that he was no match for them. He could only become stronger. After walking for an unknown period of time, there was suddenly a sound in the forest. As he moved forward, the rumbling sound grew closer and closer, until it was like thunder. The scenery in front of him suddenly became clear. On a cliff that was dozens of feet high, a waterfall flew straight down and fell into the pool like a jade dragon, splashing snowflake-like foam. In the center of the pool, there was a big whirlpool that kept spinning, and there were many smaller whirlpools around it. Li Qingshan stood in front of the waterfall. Even though he had a strong will, he still felt a little shaken in the face of nature's creation. "Brother Nyo, what is this?" "Waterfall. Of course I know it's a waterfall. Why did you bring me here?" "Of course it's cultivation." At this time, a broken piece of wood fell from the top of the waterfall and was instantly sucked into the whirlpool. It crashed into the rocks in the water and broke into pieces. If a person were to be sucked into it, they would definitely die horribly. Li Qingshan gasped. "It's in here." Oxen said, "If you want to cultivate the strength of a bull, this is the fastest shortcut. Whether you want to take it or not, it's all up to you." With that, Li Qingshan leapt into the pool resolutely. In the air, the information he had obtained from the third boss flashed through his head. The Black Wind stronghold had around 300 people, and there were a total of 7 bosses. Of course, there were 6 of them now, and 5 of them were third-rate masters. The first boss was known as the Black Bear, Xianxia. He was a true second-rate master, and he could defeat the other bosses if they worked together. Li Qingshan's current martial arts were only at the peak of the third rate. If he did not use sneak attacks, he would probably only be able to deal with 2 bosses working together. If he faced 3, he would definitely lose. He could only flee, let alone face the master of the Black Wind stronghold. He was a colossal figure that he could not defeat right now. The only good news was that once winter came, the mountains would be sealed off by snow. If the Black Wind stronghold wanted to carry out a large-scale operation, they would have to wait until spring at the very least. That was the time he had left. He had to become even stronger. Only then could he stop the Black Wind stronghold, protect the Crouching Ox village, and fulfill his promise. Various thoughts flashed through his head. He saw the water surface grow closer and closer, and the toughness of Li Qingshan's mental fortitude appeared. He immediately suppressed all of his nervousness and fear. His mind was at peace, and he quickly adjusted his position. He sucked in a deep breath and dove into the water. Oxen muttered from the top of the pool, "I even said I'd take it step by step. I'd start meditating under the waterfall." Immediately, it felt a wave of resentment attack it. Little and stared at it fixedly, and Oxen felt slightly uncomfortable. "Brat, don't look at me like that." The rapids slammed against Li Qingshan's body. He was like a small boat in a storm, unable to control himself. He could collide with the rocks at any time and sink. Li Qingshan was quite skilled in the water, but he was unable to unleash it at all right now. He used the ox demon forges its hide, and the pain from the water against his skin vanished. Before he could even catch his breath, a black shadow pressed towards him. The rapids pushed him towards the rocks. The huge log earlier served as an example. Even with the ox demon forges its hide, he would still die from being smashed to pieces. It was far too difficult to fend off the power of nature with the body of a human. The ox demon stamps its hooves. A mouthful of true qi sank into his dantian, and Li Qingshan's body seemed to grow heavier out of nowhere. Suddenly he plummeted and landed on the tough bottom of the pool. The rocks cracked, leaving behind 2 deep footprints. However, when he reached the bottom of the pool, the direction of the current changed again, pulling him towards the largest whirlpool. He tried his best to stay where he was, fighting against the current. Soon, he used up his breath, and a suffocating feeling gripped him tightly. In this kind of current, it was impossible to swim out of the water. As soon as his feet left the water, he would be sucked into the whirlpool by the current. Soon he lost his consciousness. Even the deafening roar seemed to be far away. Suddenly he felt a chill in his chest, and his true qi reacted automatically. When Li Qingshan regained his consciousness, he saw Little and pressing his chest anxiously, and the yin qi triggered the reaction of his true qi. In this moment of life and death, his true qi suddenly circulated faster, rushing into his mouth and nose. The feeling of suffocation vanished, replaced by innate true qi. Li Qingshan had never expected true qi to have such a wondrous use. He nodded at Little and to express his gratitude before gritting his teeth and releasing his feet, allowing the current to suck him into the huge whirlpool. Little and paced around the surroundings of the whirlpool for a while before suddenly making up his mind. He returned to shore and knelt down, bowing to Oxen. Oxen asked, "You want to help him?" Little and nodded violently. Lu Hong and Li Long returned to the Crouching Ox village and comforted the villagers before returning to Qingyang City. The village seemed to have returned to peace, but the feeling of unease could not be shaken off. The Black Wind stronghold was like a terrifying mountain pressing down on their heads. Many people wanted to flee the village. However, Li Qingshan's promise before he left gave everyone hope. At a critical moment, the prodigy of the village, Li Long, was unable to protect them, and the important figure of the city, Lu Hong, had only arrived afterwards. Only Li Qingshan stood before them all, protecting them all alone. Afterwards, the rumored soldiers appeared and took away the heads of the third boss and several dozen bandits. Qingyang City shook up. There was actually someone bold enough to offend the Black Wind stronghold. Both the righteous and the righteous learnt a name, Li Qingshan. In the government office, the fat district magistrate ordered the advisor, "Quick, report the merit to the prefect." As soon as I arrived in Qingyang City, I annihilated a group of bandits. If anyone still dares to say I'm useless, hang their heads on the city gates and let the people of the city know my power. Also, find that Li Qingshan. I want to thank him in person for saving my life and give him great riches and honor. The advisor said, "Sir, it's only right to report the merit to the prefect, but there's no need to hang their heads." The Black Wind stronghold is not to be trifled with. As for that Li Qingshan, he'll probably die. Yes, in the eyes of many people, Li Qingshan was already a dead man. Although they admired Li Qingshan's viciousness and martial arts, no one believed he was the opponent of the Black Wind stronghold. The Black Bear, Xianxia, was a figure who could stop children from crying at night in Qingyang City. He had made a name for himself even before Li Qingshan. The two of them were on completely different levels. Chapter 41. All the advisor could do was agree. The district magistrate's desire for silver had already overwhelmed his fear of the Black Wind stronghold, so he could not persuade him otherwise. And the Black Wind stronghold probably would not be bold enough to openly kill an official and rebel. The fat district magistrate's aura suddenly vanished. He said softly, "It's not like I killed him. There's no need for the master of the Black Wind stronghold to make trouble for me, right?" The advisor twirled his mustache. "He probably won't, but just in case. Ask your sister for reinforcements and get the prefect to send reinforcements." The fat district magistrate said, "Yes. He might be the prefect, but he's also my brother-in-law. We're all family. As long as he sends a hawkwolf guard, we won't have to fear anyone." Although he was chubby, his younger sister just happened to be as pretty as a flower. The prefect took a fancy to her and took her in as a concubine, so she was very doted on. His status rose as well, so he begged his sister to give him a pillow talk so that he could get a position. However, the prefect did not like him, so he casually sent him to the remote Qingyang City to become the district magistrate. Not only did it deny him the opportunity to use his connections to intimidate others, but it also kept him away from his sister. It was basically killing two birds with one stone. The advisor thought, how can the hawkwolf guard be sent over so easily? Just finding a decent guard in the prefect's estate will be enough. Then what about Li Qingshan? The fat district magistrate thought about it and said, he's my savior no matter what. When I see him, give him some silver and send him elsewhere. The Clear River Prefecture is so large, so where can't he go? In the Drawn Rains village, Huang Binggu received the news. At first, he was surprised before laughing aloud. Nicely done. Ever since he had ingested the spiritual alcohol, his sickly appearance had vanished. He had become rosy and full of life. Not only had his martial arts recovered, but they had even improved drastically. Hunting Chief, won't he be making trouble for the Drawn Rains village by offending the Black Wind stronghold like this? He's carrying your stone splitter bow. You shouldn't have given it to him in the first place, and he's already gone missing. He's probably already fled. Xiao He was dissatisfied. That day at the market, he had eaten Li Qingshan's fist. Although he did not dare to retaliate, he still had some resentment. Originally, he was the leader of the younger generation in the village, but when Li Qingshan came, he was completely overshadowed. Now that he was in the limelight, his heart was filled with jealousy. Huang Binggu said, if the Black Wind stronghold comes knocking on our door, we'll receive whatever methods they have. However, he won't run, much less come to us for protection. I'm just a sick tiger, but he's a true tiger that has descended from the mountains. Therefore, the name, Descending the Mountain Tiger, became Li Qingshan's first nickname. When the heads of dozens of Black Wind Mountain bandits were hung on top of the city walls, Li Qingshan's name spread even further. Large patches of snowflakes floated down from the sky. In the middle of the night, a black shadow scuttled onto the top of the city walls and took down the third boss's head. Then he urged his horse to gallop back to the Black Wind stronghold, bringing it to the chief of the stronghold, Xianxia. Xianxia was just like his nickname. Not only was he abnormally tall, his hair was also thick and black. From afar, he looked like a giant bear. With a single glance, it was obvious that this person was born with great strength. He stood up and looked around. Regardless of whether it was the bosses on the two sides or the surrounding bandits, no one dared to make a sound. Boom! His huge, bear-like palm slammed down, and the head, along with the thick rosewood table, was smashed to pieces. This is the fate of the incompetent. This is also the fate of those who dare to provoke me. Pieces of wood shot in all directions. The nearby bandits were all pierced in the face, but no one dared to make a sound or move. The second boss waved his fan and stood up. He was a middle-aged man dressed like a scholar. Even at this time of the year, he still wore a long robe, which showed just how deep his inner strength was. Chief, the third boss was heavily injured by a sneak attack with the stone splitter bow. That's why he couldn't defeat that brat. Stone splitter bow? Huang Binggu. A trace of vigilance appeared in Xianxia's eyes. Wasn't he seriously ill? I heard that he's recovered. Xianxia's brows furrowed as he muttered to himself. On Bailao Peak, Yang Jun said, you still haven't found him? Anger twisted his handsome face. He had always been a good-for-nothing, so he didn't have that much patience. Young master, I've heard some news recently. Chida said. Drawn Rains Village's Huang Binggu has recovered. What about it? Yang Jun said impatiently. Chida secretly cursed him for being an idiot. I heard that his illness is chronic, and only the spirit ginseng can cure it. Yang Jun's eyes lit up. He wanted nothing more than to immediately go to Drawn Rains village and ask about it. However, he wasn't crazy. With a sullen face, he said, go get my father. The spirit ginseng isn't so easily digested. Even if he ate it, he'll have to spit it out. Amidst the clamor, no one noticed that the back of Li Qingshan's house had been dug up. The porcelain jar that contained the white bones had disappeared. Snow fell, and the pond water became even more bone-piercingly cold. It didn't show any signs of freezing. Li Qingshan crawled out of the pond water, his lips turning blue. He lay down on a patch of withered grass and looked at the gray sky above the white waterfall. The breath he exhaled turned into white mist. This kind of cultivation was practically taking one's life, but Li Qingshan insisted on squeezing out all of his true qi before he was willing to climb out of the pond to rest. Only after drinking a mouthful of spirit wine did his body regain its warmth, and his exhausted true qi began to surge again. A beast was being roasted on the bonfire, emitting a thick fragrance. Little N was squatting at the side like a professional roasting master. He spun the wooden fork and sprinkled the seasoning he brought from home on top of the meat. He was completely focused. When he saw Li Qingshan coming out, he waved his hunting knife and cut off a large piece of meat. He held it up and brought it to Li Qingshan's mouth. Only when he saw Li Qingshan wolfing down the meat did he reveal a smile. Li Qingshan ate until his mouth was covered with grease. He suddenly asked in surprise, "Aren't you afraid of fire?" Little N was afraid of sunlight and also afraid of fire. There were many restrictions on what he could do. It was impossible for him to squat beside the fire so casually. Even though it was a cloudy day today, Little N would often hide in the locust wood plate and refuse to come out. Little N hesitated and couldn't answer. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "Did you learn some supernatural power from Brother Ox? It's not easy to get something out of it. Why did you hide it from me?" Little N hesitated for a while, then he carried out a porcelain jar from the bushes with difficulty. Li Qingshan opened the lid and a bloody smell assaulted his nostrils. There was a small white skeleton inside, dripping with bright red blood. The two colors, red and white, were extremely glaring and bright. They were filled with an evil and bloody feeling. Li Qingshan frowned. "What is this?" Little N was like a child who had done something wrong. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. "Path of white bone and great beauty." Oxen suddenly appeared and said 5 words. "This is also a supernatural power?" Ghosts don't have a physical body. Although they look free and can avoid the eyes and ears of normal people, when they cultivate, they are naturally handicapped. Furthermore, they are afraid of fire and light. They are restrained by many spells. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.